Circle is a proud member of Internal Comms Pro Collective. During trying times, you can't afford to have remote employees in the dark, grasping for information. Using Circle's cross-channel employee communications tool, you can be sure that employees are seeking the right message at the right time on the most convenient channel. To find out how Circle can help your organization better manage your crisis communications, visit circle.com/ICP.
I'm Sarah Jackson. Welcome to Internal Comms Pro, the podcast. I'm on the road this season to talk to the experts that can help internal communicators face their biggest challenges. The time has come to raise the internal knowing of the value that lies within.
I think people are now viewing internal communicators as a different type of team, right? Where it'll be much more focused on employee engagement. But really our goal and our objective here is the engagement piece, which is really, truly needed right now. I think they're also going to view us as the natural starting off point for employee advocacy as well.
Have you noticed the birds seem to have grown louder in the past months? One of the phenomenons of COVID-19 is the positive effect on our environment and the animals that are our neighbors. Biologists and conservationists credit COVID-19 for providing a more quiet soundscape for our feathered friends. This less noisy soundscape has empowered birds to communicate more effectively without having to stretch their vocals to sing over traffic and humans. Less noise, and the birds have regained their voice. Like the birds, internal communicators at times have struggled to find the voice of their company, the voice of their employees, and even their own voice. Stressed to cut through all the channels, politics, and the endless day-to-day to-do lists, it took a worldwide pandemic to silence all that noise. And because it is now quiet, we can hear things we couldn't hear before. We hear the song of the internal, what is stirring on the inside of our companies, the inside of our employees' homes, the songs that are stirring now in their hearts and minds. One particular internal communicator struck a chord with me as he invited me to take a peek inside his home, which is now an office that he shares with his wife, who is also working full-time, and his 2 children.
We have 2 young kids here. My wife works, so it's our youngest one just requires 100% attention all the time, and we're maybe giving him, 30 to 40%.
That's Connor Walker. Connor is just like you and me, an internal communicator treading the COVID-19 waters. And he has been at this since the beginning, since a portion of his employees are where this crisis began, Wuhan, China. I want to invite you into Connor's home to hear his story and also the new song that he and his team are now singing.
Hello, my name is Connor Walker. I'm Director of Internal and External Communications at Lenovo, the world's largest computer company, and we make a whole host and variety of other technology devices as well.
Well, I'm so grateful that you have agreed to come on our show today. I've really wanted to hear kind of right from the horse's mouth, right directly from internal communicators who have been in the thick of this. And it sounds like you have been in the thick of it since day one, given where your employees are located. Can you sort of tell us your experience and your story? Because you've been dealing this since January, right?
Yes, without a doubt. It's been top of mind since pretty much the new year, since coming back from the Consumer Electronics Show in Las Vegas. It was one of those things where the epicenter, as everyone knows, is in Wuhan, and that's also a place where Lenovo has 10,000 employees. So it was happening. The pandemic broke out during the pandemic broke out during the Chinese New Year. So that was a time where most, if not all, of my colleagues are kind of away from the major cities. They're back home. They're in kind of rural parts of China, and there's not a whole lot of internet connectivity. So when COVID, and we were calling it coronavirus at the time, when coronavirus broke out, it really was the job of my team and I and a handful of those of us on the global communications teams, we really hopped in, and it was normally something that probably my counterparts on the China communications team would spearhead. But since they were all on vacation, and some, if not most of them, didn't just have access to internet, right? Other than taking phone calls, we had to do a lot of the heavy lifting. So a lot of our experience started in mid to late January during the Chinese New Year at the epicenter in Wuhan.
So can you kind of take us through what 2 to 3 things did you do first? Because I know our audience, they love to learn and they love to kind of have some more tactical pieces. Like, what was step 1, step 2, step 3?
Sure, and I think this will come to no surprise, but it was really the step one was kind of I wouldn't say immediate, but it definitely it happened right away and ongoing. It seemed to be a never-ending meeting with legal, with HR, with security, with a whole host of departments. The we Anyone you could think of, travel. We had our travel team in the mix. And it really was just a series of giant meetings with all these departments right away. So it became one of the first questions was, uh, is the site closed down? Yes, the site's closed down. The second question is, what if someone's sick, right? So we really just started with kind of, I think some people view it with a raised eyebrow, but it really was a lot of change management. It was emergency change management. And I think, communicators, us as internal communicators, we have a lot of experience with that, but it's also one of those things. It was a time where just our innate skill as communicators came to the fore, and just advising the teams with how we should message these things, how we should think about these things, and telling our executive teams also, this is what our employees are probably thinking. This is the mindset that they're in too. So it really started right away as I said, a cross collaborative effort with just any department we could think of that made sense.
Now, was this something new where you were sort of thrust into working with all of these departments, or is that typical, or did it kind of elevate and bring to forefront these interdepartmental relationships?
It definitely elevated the pre-existing relationships that we have with, or that I have with, our HR and legal teams. It There were also, as I mentioned, the security teams, teams like travel teams. Those are teams that we had maybe worked off, like on some one-off assignments, maybe on an annual basis, short little projects assignments. But this was something where that became kind of the new forefront, right? And also with IT played a very major role in all of this as well. So I think, us at Lenovo, we have, especially my team, we have experience with the digital transformation of our internal communications tools. So we had already had that relationship with IT, just from transforming our internal comms platforms. But this was kind of a new need for them. This is one of those things where, okay, we're now have at least 30,000 employees, and soon the rest of our employees, all 60,000 of us, are working from home. What does that mean from an IT point of view? What does that mean from a cybersecurity point of view? So again, I think it definitely called in new types of relationships with those teams that were much more urgent, much more frequent.
Okay. So do you think that not only for you personally, and then I'd love to get your take on what you might think of maybe your other internal comms colleagues in other industries, do you think this has elevated the industry of internal comms, or has it shoved it more under the water and kind of doubled the workload, or both?
I think it's definitely double the workload, at least for my team and I. But I think, and probably for all of us, I think it is definitely. I think more than maybe a hybrid of your question, or your proposed answers is. I think people are now viewing internal communicators as a different type of team, right? Where it'll be much more focused on employee engagement, right? I think the throughput of all of our work, I think that's coming to the fore. So I don't think it's really, yes, our role is still internal communications, but really our goal and our objective here is the engagement piece, which is really truly needed right now. And I think the companies that understand that are also going to quickly, after the pandemic, and hopefully we get a vaccine soon, and hopefully we're able to leave our houses, and all those other things that we took for granted for so long. I think they're also going to view us as the natural starting off point for employee advocacy as well. So I think those are a couple of changes that are going to come about this. We'll see a bifurcation of the companies that really put their employees first, and as such, I think the consumers are going to want to hear those stories. They're ready for those stories, and the teams that will be ready to embrace those are those of internal communications.
Don't you love the new notes that companies are singing, particularly those putting employees first? I thought it might be helpful here to exchange notes with Connor. In this next part, or shall we say verse of today's song, we get to hear Connor's light bulb moment and how he listened to what type of subject matters his employees were now hungry for. And we'll end this part of our episode on a high note as Connor gives us insights into Lenovo's most trafficked article. So tell us about how, personally you guys are engaging your employees. Give our audience some insights, some tips of maybe some creative things that you have done, maybe some success stories that have come out of maybe new things you've tried. Paint me a picture of what does employee engagement now look like for in your side of the house.
Certainly, I think we're we're no different than I'm assuming a lot of my colleagues and peers, and especially those that I've talked to in the past 3 months throughout this pandemic, and that we have a variety of digital solutions that we've had in place for about the past 18 to 12 months now. Um, we have our own employee news app. It's mobile. It's on iTunes. It's on Google Play Store. So we're able to get most, if not all, your 98, 99% of our employees um, who have smartphones with news, with not just the news, the main company news, but also the news that they sign up for. So if you're in accounting in India, you're able to follow the country news there. In India, you're able to follow the finance news as well. That's pertinent to Lenovo. So that's one solution. We have, obviously, we're using an email CRM, so we know what our open rates like, who's clicking on what, and then obviously the internet portal as well. So I just mentioned all those just because we're using all of these platforms. I think the the big throughput here is what is the quote stuff that's on those platforms, right? And how do we rethink the content that we've been doing? I think internal comms as well has been maybe I've from what I've seen, the tip of the spear from the transformation from earned media to owned media. And I think us as internal comms, we've been able to ride that shift or even lead that shift easier than others, just because we've been doing owned media, I think, longer than anyone else. So my team and I, we've had the luxury of thinking about owned media for a while, and as a result, we've been thinking about new formats also. So before the pandemic broke out, I'd say in the past, year and a half or so, as these platforms were becoming online, we really rethought how we were using video, how we were using audio. We've started producing our own podcast. We've started producing not quick and easy videos, but 2 to 3 minute videos that are one camera, maybe two camera maximum. But they're not highly edited. They're not highly produced. They're normally one take sort of bits of news. And I think, thinking about our content in that sort of way, that's been the key here. Also, the types of, what's the subject matter? We've noticed by far that our employees are very hungry for subject matter that pertains to what are their colleagues doing? How are they A, grappling with this? B, what are they doing just in the community? I've been with Lenovo for nearly 10 years now. One of the most trafficked article I've ever seen on our internet was about how a handful of employees in Wuhan during the pandemic's outbreak basically got together thousands of pieces of IT equipment and brought them into the city at the construction of those two emergency hospitals that were put together in the span of 2 weeks. It was a fantastic story, and you know it literally received hundreds of comments and hundreds of likes, and was shared externally. And that was something that when we saw the success of that, just from a traffic perspective and the sharing perspective, we're like, okay, light bulb here. This is what our employees want to see, and it has been that continues to hold true to today.
And I love that now the value of what internal comms is doing, because it's evoking the feeling of connection and engagement, which now everyone realizes the value of that. Strategically with leadership, are you sharing metrics in these stories? And if so, I mean, you might be too busy to, but I want to talk about this because it feels like sometimes internal comms folks, they're just so busy just to get it out there. Do you strategically with your team kind of huddle and say, all right, how are we going to take credit for maybe some of this stuff? Because that's the other thing I notice is internal comms folks are so stinking humble. They're like, oh no, it's about the employee. But strategically, number one, do you um, sort of strategically share your successes? And two, how do you do that?
So the answer is yes, we do share our successes. It's been much more automated as of late. So as I mentioned, we when we're doing our digital transformation of our communications platforms, i.e. from, Microsoft Outlook emails to, a MailChimp or Salesforce or Marketo, whoever you're using, right? We definitely had an eye on setting up automated reports for those. So in a couple of ways. So and I'll just continue to pick on email. Whether it's we have one automated report where it spits out a PDF. It comes every Monday morning, and you get that in your inbox, and you're able to see the upwards, downwards arrows, right? So for us, it's not so much that we're not as focused on the quantity. We're just focused on what's the trend of that arrow over time, right? What's the what we haven't been in it for a year to year comparison, but what's the week to week comparison? What's the month to month comparison? Quarter to quarter comparison? And so far, those arrows have been ticking up. Um, and then also we've been able to just get the raw data from a platform like that and establish a connection to basically a dashboard. We use Domo. I know there's a bunch of dashboards all over the place, but it plugs into our larger communications dashboard as well. So there are people that are far smarter than I that are on our data and analytics and insights teams at Lenovo that are really that they understand that connection. They're the ones that I just kind of let them into the tool and they have at it. But the output is more or less not 24/7, but maybe once a day, sort of connection um, that gives you more or less a real time, figure that can tell you what's happening within our various platforms. Now, the thing that I'm most interested in is, yes, each individual platform, but what is the aggregate of all these platforms from a quantitative perspective? And then also, how do we look at that with the other qualitative metrics within Lenovo, like employee engagement, um, like, are you happy at Lenovo? Would you recommend this as a place to work? How do we marry those scores with our EX scores in a way that, kind of gives maybe what I think of as almost a true up score, as this is what's really happening within Lenovo.
Circle is a proud member of Internal Comms Pro Collective. The days of doubting the impact of internal communications are officially behind us. Internal communicators like you have held your companies together and kept your employees safe. Using Circle Broadcast cross-channel employee communications tools allows you to simplify your crisis communications messaging and deployment, making sure that the right message is received by the right employees at the time and place they need it. Discover how Circle helps companies thrive in a time of crisis at circle.com/crisis.
As I'm writing this, there literally is a mourning dove cooing outside my window. Now, y'all know me well enough by now that I am Googling what sign this mourning dove brings. And it turns out mourning doves represent peace and safety. In literature, doves present a picture of devotion, love, and friendship. The mourning doves are said to encourage healing after one lets go of emotional baggage, and they represent forgiveness, release, peace, and finally moving on or moving forward. In some ways, I feel like we can relate to the mourning doves. After all, internal communicators definitely are devoted to one another. And perhaps COVID-19 has given us as internal communicators our own voices back. Perhaps this crisis silenced all the barriers and noise that held us back in this industry, and like the dove, we are ready to move forward. Let's listen in as we hear more about what Connor has learned, how his internal comms team moved forward, and how they were the lifeline for their employees. We'll also see how this moving forward provided the momentum to make a pivot from what had been keeping Connor up at night. What's been your lowest point so far? Maybe what was the learning, your biggest learning from that? So is there something that you could share in that light?
I'd say from the transformation efforts, it definitely was much, much tougher than I thought. It it made me want to have a full-time IT person on my team, strictly devoted just to internal communications. That was a tough period, simply because these are all right and good issues to think about, but how do we think about things like phishing, like spam attacks to Lenovo? How do we prevent uh, these platforms that we're literally bringing inside the company, uh, making them foolproof, from attack, and keeping our employees safe too. So same thing. How do we think about our employees' data, their privacy, right? We operate in 180 markets all over the world, and we have employees in 60 plus countries. So the data privacy laws, they vary from place to place. So those were things I didn't really think about from the beginning, and I definitely paid for it as we were going about our merry little way process, because we had done some of this before, but maybe 5, 6 years ago, and those topics just no one thought about, data and privacy, right? And everyone was fine with the version one of the app we introduced in 2014 or 15, right? But when we did the new quote shiny app, uh, 12 months ago, that was when, oh, hey, what are you guys doing? There's this thing out here called, GDPR. We're like, yeah, you're right. Yeah, we need to pause, pump the brakes, and talk with our friends about this, and what does that mean? So those were a lot of issues I didn't think of at the beginning, and we definitely think about, they're front and center right now, and they continue to be. Um, During COVID, really, I think the I was happy. I think I don't want to speak for my team, but I was definitely happy to be burning the candle a lot. I think the work I realized the work that we were doing was of immense value and almost a lifeline to our employees. Also could have been the very much my belief. The difference between health and sickness here, in terms of the advice that we were giving to our employees. If an employee or group of employees or a lot of employees didn't receive the note on a certain Friday evening that the office is closed, do not come, and thousands of people showed up on Monday, then how would I feel? How would we feel if people were infected as a result? So I think it wasn't so much the hours that I minded. It was definitely the hardcore pivoting that we were doing as a result to. I think of the event that we're just wrapping up this week, which is our annual company kickoffs. Our fiscal year begins on April 1. We have giant meetings with our CEO, that are all over the world, and those fall under the remit of my team and I. And we canceled all of those events, at the next to last week in February, and we had to find a way to turn that event into a virtual online event only. So I think just kind of doing those types of pivots, that's been what's been keeping me up at night, and embracing and rolling with the idea of not everything has to be shot in a studio, because there are no studios anymore. We have to be comfortable with someone's husband, someone's wife holding a phone and filming. We have to be comfortable with recording a Zoom call or Teams call or what have you, right? A Skype call, and playing that as a video in front of 60,000 employees all over the world. So I think that's been some of the stuff that's just been it's been requiring a lot of hours, that transition.
Yeah. So now, can you give me a sense of where you are personally now with this whole thing, is it still kind of under the water reactive, or now, all right, we're above this is our new, we're getting ready to move into this phase of communicating the new normal, and how do you do that? Like, where are you guys in this whole thing if you had to put a phase to it? What phase are you in?
It's it's the latter. It's thinking about what are the plans for reopening. And I think that in just this week, I've been talking with a lot of colleagues at other companies. Actually, this is one of the, I think, results of this of COVID has been. I've been speaking with so many more internal comms colleagues and communications colleagues all over the world. Some who I've known for years, some who I've just met in the past 2, 3 weeks, and we've all come together just to. And I've been bouncing a lot of ideas off of everyone everywhere, and it seems that everyone's in a similar phase of starting to think about, right, what are the plans and processes in place for thinking about reopening, not reopening, how do we message thinking about reopening, right? And because that's a step in itself. And how do we, you know, prepare employees and people at large for that ideas, you know, because I think we understand, again, just because of the role that we play and we've always played, I think we're more sensitive and more in tune with this, is that we understand that people are going to feel differently walking into a building now if they see 100, 1,000, you know, people on various floors within either a building that they go to work in, or um, a concert or anything, right? So I think that means, you know, obviously that has a huge impact on how we do our work. So I think that that's a critical phase that we're definitely in, and I know that a lot of companies all over the world are.
So if you could go back before this all started in January or in December, it would be for you. What would be the warning you would give to yourself?
Oh man, that's a really good question. What would be the warning I give myself in December? I would say to be much more ready for the grassroots stories that we've been collecting. I think as communicators and as internal communicators, we have a very good eye and a nose, and we have our own separate, you know, established ways of finding the best stories within the company. Um, the pandemic has really put that to the limits. And I'd say it's kind of doing a rewire of the way that we are finding our stories. Even if it was just one of those things where, you know, we just heard things in the office. What happens when you don't hear things in the office anymore, right? And how do you really kind of network and bring the stories together that, again, that we've been finding that our employees really want to hear. So I think that that's been something that I wasn't prepared for as much, but we definitely were able to pivot much more, and just and honestly, you know, grapevine, you know, if you remember the telephone game, you know, kind of, you know, doing that back to its source, you know, just from a bunch of chats, you know, chats on Microsoft Team or Skype or what have you, right? And oh, hey, I heard that this person was, you know, handing out, you know, bags of you know, dough and starter kits for bread in India. And literally having 7 different chats with 7 different people, finding out who that employee and group of employees are, and you know, and getting their story. So that's been, I think, a big lesson, is rethinking the way that we gather our human stories, and not so much, you know, with no longer, not that the desire isn't there for them, but you know, really shifting away from the business type stories, the new products or the new gadget stories that I think that we've become so used to writing.
So you're rewiring, so you're just now kind of old schooling it, trying to, like, how did you rewire that? I want to dive in a little bit deeper. Is it you're asking for those around, like, have you heard of any stories and then somebody gives you kind of a lead and you chase that down?
Yes, it's very much been, you know, back to the 2003 days of me, you know, running around, you know, with a pen and you know, notepad and a pencil, you know, taking scribbling down notes and talking to sources, you know, back in, you know, journalism days. It is very much, you know, similar, except, you know, it's this is all digital. and literally just a trail of chats, literally finding, hey, have you heard of anyone, or who would have a good idea of that? Oh, okay. And then, just, for every dead end that pops up, you're just going to find one that gets you to, the source here. So it really has been just, kind of putting the feelers out there and just having, a wide network. I think, we tend to maybe gravitate too closely to the executives, too closely to what's happening in marketing communications, and maybe our, the teams that touch us, closest, maybe HR and legal perhaps, but really getting out into the business, like way out into the business, and finding out what's happening in offices, in that we've never thought of before.
And are you're finding employees are open and willing to share those stories?
Very much so. Very, very much so. It has been, there hasn't been anything, no one's been nervous at all about this. I think it's, and also I think the the tone from our leadership team, and the tone that, we've been pushing for, has been one of, you can't work 24/7 right now. It's not good. Don't do it. So go outside, do what you can, take a breather, step away. So I think any worries about, you know doing more perhaps, outside of the office, have really melted, just with the support from, from the entire company here.
COVID-19 has provided, in some ways, a quiet space to reflect on the internal communicator's experience. In some ways, it's forced us to sing a new song, one that doesn't have to be so polished or formal. This crisis has humanized the internal communication process, and I would anticipate lays an amazing groundwork by removing all the barriers that typically stand in the way of trying new things, innovating, being allowed to fail, to learn, to grow, and in the end, find our true, authentic voice. As I wrapped up my song with Connor, he gave me more insight to this new, allowed authenticity that is resonating with his audience. And in the spirit of authenticity, we get personal as I ask about Connor, how he's doing personally. So let's listen in.
I think we've been one of the things I've been thinking about and discussing with some of my colleagues and peers has been rethinking the use of video recordings for the executive teams. I think so much of everything that we've wanted to do and have done in the past has been very highly polished, very uh, a lot of production, a lot of labor, a lot of prep with the script, with getting a teleprompter and all those other things that, I think that normally go into a video that we do with our C-suite team. I think more of a focus is, we have to get away from that. We have to kind of be much more authentic, be much more real, and be much more, I don't know the answer, and admit, maybe say something close to that, right? When where we don't know, but we know that we're working on it, and we know we're establishing, the programs and the parameters of dealing with the many issues that have popped up as a result of the outbreak. So I think that's been one thing that I've been noticing is definitely a push for more not impromptu, but, maybe a much more regular program that are kind of, I always think of, the fireside chats, right, on the radio, but, something like that, where it seems more, um, you know, less formal, and also because it's one of those things where we have to realize employees are digesting this news, these videos, and, audio clips in their homes now. It's in a much more different environment than I think that we've been asking employees to consume them in the past. So I think that that plays a huge role here as well. It's different watching and listening to someone or something, at the office, as opposed to on your couch, making dinner or what have you. I think it's much more personal. I think, and as a result of the times too, we have to be more personal.
We both have children, and you have young children. Talk about just that personal piece, if you don't mind, and if you'd be so open about kind of your personal situation and how you're working with that. What are the ages of your children?
Sure. So I have a two. I love him. I love my son. I have a 2 year. I have a 2-year-old son and a 3.5-year-old daughter, both of whom, are the lights of my life, along with my wife. But she works as well. She has a full-time job. She's in e-commerce, and she manages a team of account managers. And as you can imagine, selling things online is it's in a boom right now. So she's and then I'm on internal communication. So neither one of us are, both of us are in this kind of very much on demand, you know, vertical or group right now. So with the our daughter, the older one, she's very happy to watch Disney Plus all day, every day. So thank you, Bob Iger and team, for that wonderful, wonderful app. My son, though, he's two. He is, he'll watch 5 to 7 minutes, and then he'll torture his sister. He will, he'll try and jump off of something. So he again, he's two, and we have to remind ourselves that he requires 100% attention, and man, we're definitely not able to give it to him. So it's, I think what we've figured out is there are these windows in the day. I'm gonna take 7 to 8:30 a.m. morning shift and just work, and then my wife will step in around 9 and run till 11, and then we both break for lunchtime, nap time. And then nap time is the new open window for recording podcasts like this, and answering emails, and just doing a lot of our work. And then we pretty much noticed that from nap time onwards till really bedtime, we can't really do a whole lot of work. Just they get up, they really crave our attention. So we go for a walk, we come back, they've been helping us cook, all that other good stuff. And then it's we work until the night, and until we're either exhausted, and we magically fall asleep quickly. So that's just been we've been trying to block our day. We've been trying to split the day blocks in the mornings, and then that seems to be working for us. It seems to be, it's not ideal, but it's doable.
Well, I appreciate you're always telling the employee stories. I just wanted to give you the opportunity to share your personal story of how are you doing, and I guess how I would love just to know when you are connecting with other internal communicators. Are you guys in a group, or is this just your personal connections that you have?
It's been a little bit of both. It's been for the past several years, man, maybe even past decade or longer. There's been a group of what I would just call friends in the area. We're in the Research Triangle Park in North Carolina, so we have a lot of IBM's headquarters were here. I think that technically speaking, they are still here. But a lot of, very big technology companies are headquartered here in the Triangle. And we have a little group of Triangle internal communicators, that, has just been a sounding board for the past, 7, 8 years. I think it might have been longer. One of my colleagues at SAS, she actually started the group, and it's still going strong to this day. So we've been bouncing a lot of ideas off of each other. Some of the articles I posted to LinkedIn has sparked a lot of conversation for me, actually, and I've been having much more global conversations with peers, who do what we do overseas. Mostly, in England, but a couple from elsewhere on the other side, the west coast of the United States. So it's been a collection of people and friends, and really I think everyone here is just trying to, figure it out together. What are you doing? How are you doing it? And just a lot of kind of group emails and group chats. So that's how I've been approaching it.
Well, not well, I wanted you to share that because I think to be a part of a community, if you are an internal communicator and you're isolated, or if you're a one or two man band, that it's so important to have, groups out there of other internal communicators. I know we're kicking off a series on the 11th called Bloom, where I want to do this. I want to have internal communicators share kind of their experience and their stories, or the best idea they came up with, so that everyone's not so isolated and alone. So
Whoever's listening, please, in the spirit of that camaraderie, please look me up on LinkedIn. Please give me a chat. Please, ask me to connect, or just drop me a question. I'm on Twitter too. So however you can get me, please feel free to reach out. I wholeheartedly encourage it, especially now. And also, I'm looking to learn as much as I can as well. So please do not be afraid to network.
all right. Well, I can't thank you enough for your time today. I know it's a lot to ask. I think you had such a great story with, being in it from the beginning, and just such great tips and advice and insights. So thanks again.
Thank you.
Doesn't it feel good to be singing a new song? Well, we want to hear your new song, how you've grown. Join us for our new Bloom series starting May 11th. Visit internalcommspro.com to register or to nominate a fellow colleague that you find in full bloom. We'd love to hear your song and their song. Register today.
Internal Comms Pro podcast is produced by Super Awesome Media. Our theme music is Hard Fought Victory by Purple Planet Music. Thank you for listening.